Welcome, everybody, back to F1 Chase for the Title. I'm your host, JB, alongside of my colleagues. Chase, say hello.
Hello.
Steve Marino.
Hello.
And last but certainly not least, Dr. Bill.
Good morning, everyone.
How's everybody doing this morning?
Good. A little tired from a long week, but
Yeah.
Long week. Chase back to school, right?
Yep.
Things going well so far?
Seems like it.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's an enthusiastic response, but that's okay. Listen, coming back to school at any time, it's always a challenge, but in this particular pandemic situation, it's even more of a weird situation, I'm sure. So I wish everybody the best too, with kids going back to school and parents trying to deal with that and administrators and teachers and what have you. But fortunately for us, we get to focus on something a little bit more specific, and it's the Formula One season. And we're about to start round 10, and we just literally have just come off qualifying for the Russian Grand Prix. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, of course, and talk a little bit about some F1 news, because there's a lot of things been going on, and a little bit of the break that we've had, lots of conversations with different people about different subjects. And, a few things caught my mind, so I figured I'd throw out a couple of things. And one of the interesting things is, of course, this weekend, Mr. Hamilton has a very good shot at tying Michael Schumacher's record for victories at 91. And they were interviewing Sebastian Vettel about that. And, of course, Schumacher is Vettel's idol. And at one point in time, he was Hamilton's teammate, and we know how that worked out. So it was interesting listening to Vettel talk about mixed emotions, he said, about Hamilton, no doubt, eventually eclipsing here Schumacher's record. So it's got to be hard on somebody like Vettel because, he's in the midst of a downturn in his career, but Schumacher's his hero. And a guy that I don't think he particularly likes, Hamilton, is going to break the record. So it's got to be an awkward situation for him, Dr. Bill, don't you think?
oh yeah, mixed emotions. Like you said, he's got his career racing hero going to be eclipsed by somebody who he has, not the greatest love for. But I think he definitely respects the guy and respects his skills and what he's proven in his career so far.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough because he's trying to be politically correct as well, while fighting those emotions. I gotta imagine that it is tough because I think to some extent, you also acknowledge your own career and where it's at, and as you pointed out, Dr. Bill, it's he's past his peak, he's on the downward trend, and it's probably tough to take it all in.
The irony, of course, there is that Vettel's actually younger than Hamilton. Vettel's 33 and Hamilton's 36.
Yeah.
But they're very different.
Hamilton shows no signs of going down, and Vettel shows no signs of speeding up, right, Chase?
Yeah. It's interesting because Vettel, when he was on Red Bull and other teams, he was just so dominant, and now to see where he is, barely finishing in the points position with like another falling off team right now, Ferrari, it's just kind of sad to see. As
we pointed out, Ferrari did last week at the Mugello did not exactly give Ferrari fans a lot of hope by basically saying, we suck now, we're going to be sucky next year, and then catch us in 222.
Yeah.
So interestingly, as this Hamilton train continues to roar down the track, the one guy that has been very close to Hamilton, but has not yet seemed to be able to get over the hump is Bottas. So interestingly, this week he said, it's time to put Hamilton out of a race, and he's in talks with Haas to make that happen. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty bold thing to say out loud. We all know you feel that way, Valtteri, but to say that out loud, you really must be frustrated. What do you think about that, Steve?
I think it's a bit of a joke. I mean, if he can't beat Hamilton with the equipment of Mercedes, I don't know how he thinks he's going to do it anywhere else.
Well, I don't know, but putting the guy into the wall is pretty serious stuff. But anyway, You know how close though we were going over how close Bottas has been to Hamilton in qualifying and in some of these
It continues to be. I mean, you look at
like hundreds of a seconds we're talking about.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah. So what does that tell you, Dr. Bill, about what Bottas is doing or the team's not doing or what have you?
I feel a French-Swiss missile coming at number 44.
Really?
Well, the French and the British are I've always at times not liked each other. So
that is true. That is
and you know, I don't know. Roman has is he more of a, if he's more of a Swiss affinity, he'll stay neutral. But I have a feeling he will be more than happy to get involved.
Well, yeah, you know, it's very interesting, and Lewis this week again is talking about his concern about lack of diversity in Formula One, and they got a commission, and the McLaren chief's going to be on it, and but the reality is that, you know, first of all, it's a sport that is very diverse, because when you look at all the nationalities and ethnicities that are on the Formula One circuit, it's pretty remarkable. And I think you got to keep in context the fact that we have, as I've made a note here, we have 7 billion people on the planet, and only 22 people are qualified to drive Formula One at any one time. So it's while it's certainly a worthy cause, it's you know, this is extremely wealthy people that are in this endeavor in terms of the manufacturers and the sponsorships and the corporations, and even a guy like, look at Perez. He went to sort of Niki Lauda school of have your family basically commit a lot of dough and bring sponsors with you, and even if you're not the fastest guy, you got money, we can make you faster, right, Steve?
Yeah, it is all about money and family heritage. And if you have a name like, you know, I know we've talked about this in past shows, but like Andretti, you look at Schumacher, Mick Schumacher, who just won, you know, the race this weekend in Russia for, what was it, F2? F2. You know, the only reason why Mick Schumacher is in racing is because of his father. Sure. You know, it's a name, it's a brand. Right. And it carries in the sport.
And even Chase, I was watching this morning while you were sleeping, the E-race in Monaco, and I saw David Schumacher doing well in the E-simulation racing. Now, is he Ralph's son? He must be Nick's cousin, you know?
No, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know as much about Formula E racers and drivers as much.
Well, it was funny because the race I watched, it had Leclerc in it, and Leclerc's brother was racing in it. And it's like, so all the e-racing, a lot of family stuff going on, because I think Lewis Hamilton's brother races in the e-sim stuff. So to Steve's point, you know, it's continuation of these family dynasties to the extent that the kid is remotely qualified, is going to have the leg up over almost anybody else. It doesn't matter who they are or where they're from, right?
But then you see what happened at Perez, and I find that really, really intriguing. Is basically, from my impression of watching the Netflix series, basically he saved that team financially. He kept them afloat. He kept them going for however long until they needed to get to where they are now, and then he's just tossed overboard. Just how the heck does that happen? It's just I find that really interesting to see what was going on.
It sounded like in his statement that when he was leaving, that it was half them kicking him off, but it also sounded like he was kind of just leaving himself too, like for another venture, like maybe to save another team like Haas.
Yeah.
But how much of a choice did he have in that, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess the point of the diversity thing is, you know, as we talked about too, there's still no Americans driving in Formula One. And we have an American team, but there are no American drivers. Now, so when you start to get in and really peel back the onion of, you know, what we're talking about in terms of it's not like an NFL, it's not like soccer, it's not like basketball, it's not like any team sport where you have multiple players and multiple people on a team at one time. There are two guys that are going to be on the field at any one time for any of these teams, and as we talked about, there's so much of things that narrow this. It's like, it's really like SEALs. You know what I mean? It's like you have to be the best of the best of the best, with an added addition of money and connections, all to help you in the sport tremendously. But I think Lewis is, you know, on the right track. I just think that he's probably going to get a little frustrated even more as he tries to see what he's up against. He'd be better off trying to, frankly, develop his own team. He's got enough money. He could probably draw the sponsorships after he's done driving, or maybe he drives for a while for his own team or something. And that's a way to force change, because if you bring the money to the table, people have to listen to you.
Otherwise, it's going to take time, and that's one way to kind of end run around that problem of money. And it's like, probably equestrian sports are not all that diverse as you might like them to be.
Right. That's true. I thought it was also interesting. Lando Norris was quoted this week. He was talking about the fact that McLaren is right there with Racing Point for third, and it's because they're, basically better executing their strategy. And it was a little sort of fuzzy. So Norris, who's of British descent and Belgian descent, apparently, I think it was the Daily Mirror over in England, translated into the Queen's English. And what Norris actually said was, these bloody Canadian bastards cheat their freaking arses off and still can't put us away. I thought, wow, that's a bold statement by a young man like Norris. But I guess just shows how competitive these people are getting. You know what I'm saying, Dr. Bill?
Yeah. It's a cutthroat business. And I imagine, though, McLaren, just in view of their history, their racing history, probably has a much more efficient system developed over the years and or decades versus, an entity such as Racing Point. So, Racing Point's going to do what they got to do.
Yeah, and interesting along those lines, Steve. Speaking of McLaren, I saw that Zach Brown of McLaren I think they had an LMP2 team at Le Mans last week that did quite well. Did you catch that?
Caught pieces of it. Caught pieces of it.
Yeah, Toyota finished again, and I think they took the top 2 spots, and then actually a car from the GTE class actually finished, I think, second overall, which is kind of a surprise that you see a car from a lower division to be able to be that competitive overall. So before we ran qualifying this morning, I put out a little Nostradamus for you guys to consider. Just add some points to your totals. And Dr. Bill and Steve took me up on that. And so let's just go over quickly the results, and then we'll segue into our next segment. Question number 1 was, Hamilton takes the pole, yes or no? And of course he did take the pole, and that was for 5 points. And Steve, I think you and Dr. Bill both had that, right?
No, I had I think Bottas taking pole.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. The second question was, but Bottas take the pole? Of course he didn't.
No, I thought he would.
Vettel makes it into Q3. Who knew how exciting that would be? And literally at the last second, he got knocked down out of Q3, which is pretty interesting. Actually, he didn't go into Q2, right? Or was it Q3? I'm trying to.
Yeah, it was in Q2.
It was in Q2.
Yeah, he almost made it to Q3.
And he almost kept Hamilton from making it into.
Right. They had that red flag in qualifying. Right. Kind of interesting. Yeah. Alpine makes it to the podium. No, that didn't happen. No, that was a question. And Grosjean qualifies better than 15th.
Almost.
Favorite.
Almost.
Dr. Bill.
He was hanging in there, and I'm watching Russell's run, and it's like he's right there at 15, and now he's 16.
Totally knocked out
at the last minute. But you know what? That's great for him to get knocked out by Russell. Russell makes it into Q2 again. That's great. So.
Yeah, it was. It was kind of an interesting qualifying session, actually, because of the red flag thing and learning about the rules, about what happened. And literally Hamilton almost didn't get to start his hot lap in time to move into the Q3, which would have been a huge shock to everybody.
Yep.
It just shows you that, even when you think everything is going to happen, once the cars get out there, you really don't know. You can't control everything, even though these guys are control freaks. So, all right. Well, listen, I think we've, talked a little bit about some news, and we've gone over some qualifying stuff. Now let's maybe get into the race itself, and we'll do that when we come back in our second segment. Stay with us.